in Boston who was telling me that it was 31 last night. I know.
That's no good.
Cold and raining. All right, so 2:02. So let's start. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to get started as people are coming in. And I don't think we're going to last over an hour the way we did last time. So we're gonna try to stay within an hour. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then we'll introduce Holly, and then we'll talk about HR tech trends. So really quickly, I think I know almost everybody here, but just in case we're meeting for the first time, I am Leah Joyner. I'm the founder of HCM Tech Advisory. It's a consulting company that I founded last year, and our purpose is to help HR leaders understand this whole ecosystem of HR tech, essentially, and provide honest and authentic advice. And I do also benefits administration and HR strategy consulting. So we have over 20 years of experience, started out doing actuarial analysis and benefits design, and moved over to benefits administration and now technology. So all of that experience is what I use to guide my clients. So with that, I am so honored to be joined by someone that I highly regard, Holly Larson, who is not only a dear friend of mine, but she's everything from believing in what we do. She's also a client of mine, and she is just a supporter and someone that I truly admire and value. So Holly when we started these HR lunch and learns this summer. She was the first person who attended and was the guest speaker, and so excited to be closing this with her. And so Holly, please introduce yourself and tell everybody all about what you do.
I'm a little embarrassed, but thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you again, Leah. Yeah, so I have been in this space for well over 20 years. I don't want to say just how well at this point, but I've been done some of the things that Leah mentioned as well, HR technology consulting with USI now, and have been really came from the vendor space. So working with a lot of the vendors that I'm sure that you know, some that you know and love, and some you probably would rather love and leave. But working with HCM vendors and bin admin vendors, and also have some background not only in consulting but with the analyst firms. So offering some perspective here on some of the advice that we give our clients, but also hoping to help some of you with maybe some of the things that you've got questions about, and we see some of these emerging trends. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, and we'll go ahead to the next slide. Let's get started.
Yeah.
All right. So when I saw this stat, I was blown away at first, and then I just felt a little exhausted. We have been through a lot of change, right, in the last 4 years, and this came from a stat that I saw at one of the keynotes at HR Tech recently. The amount of change that we've experienced in the workplace has increased 2.5 times since COVID as compared to what it was 30 years prior. That is a lot, and a lot of us on this in this meeting have probably experienced that. So just thinking about that and what we've been through, let's go to the next slide. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we've had so much volatility and change in the workplace? If you would, you can either key in the hashtag that you see there, or you can use your phone and snap the QR code and just tell us, why do you think we've had so much change?
So much change in 4 years.
I know, radical. 4 years compared to 30. Why do you think that is? Yeah, good point, Amanda. Why is nothing
Yes, that's a good point.
Okay, so flip it and tell me why you think nothing has changed. Just remote work, absolutely. I see that a lot of people turnover. Yeah, it's a shift of
Oh,
prioritizing mental health. Good point.
love that.
Oh, yeah, social media.
That's
Oh,
a good one.
I
Let's
know.
see.
What I said to Leah right before we started, I said, I gotta get rid of this phone. If one more person asks me how I'm gonna vote, I'm gonna lose my mind. All right.
Anything, anybody else?
I see some people are still keying
Okay.
in.
We got one more.
Yeah. Awesome. Digital. Yeah, that digital transformation for sure. Yeah, technology. We can hardly keep up, right?
And change demand for various skill sets. Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely going to dig into that.
All right. Oh, there's more. We're getting more responses here.
Bring it on. That's why we're here. AI. I wondered when that was going to pop up.
Right. I like the frustration of looking at life and requirements. Yes. COVID did that, right?
Right? COVID did so many things. All right, so let's jump in. So some of the reasons this is based on a Harvard Business Review article that came out earlier this year. I read it. I thought it was, you know, okay. So I'm geek chic. You all can testify to that, many of you. Um, it's a lot has changed. Like if you look at the 30 years before, economically we were pretty stable, right, in the world, fairly stable. Yes, there were some things, and overall, of course, there's been wars and things, but nothing like what we experienced in the last couple of years, right? They're not potential world wars, right? Interest rates are relatively, were falling, not increasing. Credit was available to people, and the inflation level was definitely moderate compared to what we've seen since COVID with all the supply and demand things. Now we have a lot of globalization because everyone was working remote. And we mentioned that a little bit. People, capital rationalization, it's a land grab for things. People are so dispersed now, and the workforce is shrinking, right? We don't have 20 and 30-year-olds just available to work, right? There's more work than there are people. And our dependence, someone said AI, we're so dependent on automation. I can tell you myself, I live like I mentioned, I live right in Hendersonville, North Carolina. That is Western North Carolina. I know you all have seen some pictures over the last few weeks of what's happening here and what happened here. I didn't have Wi-Fi for almost 2 weeks. I mean, that's how dependent. I couldn't do anything. I could do absolutely nothing for weeks. It was such a weird thing to be so dependent on the automation that we all take for granted. Leah, do you want to take
Yeah.
the next slide and talk a little bit more about that
Yeah.
dependence?
I was actually just going to add the war that's happened, unrest, right, in the world with the new
Yeah.
shifts. We talked about digital, the new expectation of working remotely now,
Mhm.
and how quickly we had to adjust to that within months. So that
Week.
shift, I
Yeah.
would say
And then back
weeks,
again, right?
within
Back.
weeks. Yeah. Okay, so what's new in HR tech? So HR tech has been changing in the past year and culminating with HR tech conference that we just came from. And so what we are seeing and learned was AI is no longer, when we were at HR tech last year, a lot of the companies were learning about AI or saying that they're doing AI, but you really didn't really see it. But this year, you really got to see what's going on with AI and how it's integrated within systems. So adoption is accelerating. Workday has been leading the pack. SAP has their own AI called Joule. SAP Joule is just doing essentially you could just go in there. It's integrated with generative AI, which a lot of people associate that with ChatGPT. So you can go in these systems and literally just type in, give me, the number of my women population between the ages of 26 and 50, located in whatever the location, and you get the data right there. You're getting not just the data, but it's analyzing it for you, just like that. Where before you had to pull the data from different sources, do your own analysis. It was taking days. I remember when I started doing this work years ago, it took me hours to come up with formulas. Now with generative AI, the data is literally at your fingertips. So HR is reshaping data analytics. Companies like Visier, which we'll talk a little bit more about, are providing just instant with their AI agents data right there in your fingertips. So that was the big thing. The AI is actually integrated in these systems, and it's not just something that we're talking about. So next slide. What's new in HR technology? So AI professionals are prioritizing system certificates. So now we're talking about the business side. So it used to be having a SHRM, which I mean, it's still a big deal. Being SHRM certified when you were working in HR was a thing. You needed to know the domain of HR. Now employees, I should say, not company, are prioritizing the Workday and the SAP and all these system certifications over the traditional SHRM and HRCI certifications that we were seeing. And what that is causing, it's just causing a shift in strategy and knowledge in HR, and the domain piece that you really need to kind of know to be strategic. So that's the shift there. HR systems are moving towards offering tailored solutions. So Workday is targeting lots of systems, not just Workday, but it's huge to hear that Workday is also targeting the small to mid market employers. So 100 plus employers now can purchase the Workday system, where before they didn't even have time to talk to you if you didn't have a certain number of employees. Like it just didn't make sense. So what does that mean? Lots of options now. If you're an employer who is global, for example, and you don't have a lot of employees, you can afford a system like Workday and you want choice. There you go. So this is going to cause some shifts in the vendor space. We're still yet, to see it, but this is something to watch out for. The other thing is the older systems, there's tons of employers out there. I have a client that uses PeopleSoft, for example, but that same client is also moving to Workday. So the trend now is the old systems, a lot of employers are moving away from that, which I think it's a good thing, to be honest, because with the new technologies like artificial intelligence, it's only going to be, I'm not going to say that it's a must for you to be able to utilize it, but it makes sense. It's the way of the future. So, Holly, is there anything that you would want to add there?
I just think to go along with what you're saying with the older systems and moving to the newer ones, as older people, as people start to retire, you're not going to have the knowledge or the skill base to support those older systems either. So you got to think about it from a future state as well, that you're just not going to have the knowledge base to upkeep those systems. So it does make sense on a lot of levels to not only from a functionality, but also from just a upkeep. It's just not going to be there, right? It's becoming obsolescence, right? It's just not going to be there.
That's a great point. And we've all kind of been talking about this and laughing about it a little bit, how you can barely find PeopleSoft consultants out there. And if you do, they're very expensive. So moving makes sense out of the older solutions. Okay, so what's new with other vendors? So Visier is a vendor that I love this company. And I mean, they're always innovating. And I'm not, obviously, we're not selling. We have experience with these systems. So um, the reason why Visier is a really cool system is you don't have to have a Workday or an SAP or some of the Microsoft solutions that already have AI integrated. You can get a solution like Visier, which has their own generative AI copilot within it. It's called V, is the name of their AI copilot. And so what they do is they come in your organization with your ready HR tech stack that you already have. It could be literally any system, and they put all your systems together for you and utilize V, their AI agent, to produce your people analytics for you. It's essentially it's a people analytics platform that is so powerful. It's not cheap. So what they were saying is it doesn't make sense to use it if you have less than 500 employees. It makes sense for a little bit larger companies. But there are people analytic solutions other than Visier that can do something similar. So that's what's out there. And it's using a solution like ChatGPT. So I'm saying that, but ChatGPT is synonymous to generative AI, but it's essentially Gen AI that is integrated in their solution. So you can just type in any question out there that takes time today to pull all of the data from the different multiple systems that takes hours to do. Then you have to analyze that data to try to come up with, strategy for your organization. Now you could just type it up, tell it what to give you, and within minutes you have it. So really cool. And then iCIMS has its recruiting solution, similar to any other applicant tracking solutions out there, like Greenhouse, for example. But iCIMS is really cool in that it also has its own AI solution where employees now, sometimes some companies force you as you're applying, I should say candidate, not employees. But when you're applying, it could take a long time. You have all this data that you're being asked to provide, and you still have to submit your resume. iCIMS has a generative, like a chat bot, where if you're applying for a job, essentially it's just asking you a few questions, you upload your resume, and it just uploads all of that data for you. That's just an example. It also does a lot of things with candidates. A lot of employers kind of struggle on how to keep up with people who are interested in the organization, so they help with that. Just a lot of cool stuff that system is doing. So another thing that we learned from HR Tech specifically was this was a survey that is done. Those of you who are not familiar with Sapient Insights, they have an annual survey where it's called the Voice of the Customer, and they go directly to, all these employers. They use all these HR systems and ask multiple questions. And what they're finding is that in the small to mid-size space, these are some of the solutions that are coming up, as in scoring high. So Rippling is has been a new system that we've been hearing about in the past few years, scoring very high. iSolved is another one. And the reason for these is their integration. So Rippling has a great integration capability. iSolved, not only do they have a great system, but they also sell service. And why is that important? So service is huge because as an HR team, if you don't know how to configure a system, or you don't have the team, or the team is not as experienced, it's recommended that you consider a service, somebody who can help on the day-to-day. So that's why I saw this coming up high. And then Employee Navigator, this was a surprise to me. And maybe I shouldn't say a surprise, but it's a good system for benefits administration. I actually really like it. It's for very small clients, I typically say below 200 employees, and it's for benefits administration. solution. But what's cool about Employee Navigator is it integrates with lots of payroll systems and also carriers. So that system is coming up high in the surveys. Anything to add there?
I've got a couple of things. So just going back to iCIMS, I was a big user of iCIMS in another organization. And so we used it. This was several years ago. I want to go back like 2018, maybe 2019. So going back several years, and the AI chatbot was amazing. We had candidates that would actually come in to the office and tell us it was called Maya, what was the name that we used, that they had an interview scheduled with Maya. And initially the recruiters would be upset because they felt like they were like, there's no, they're like, I don't like this. I don't like this salt. I'm like, why? Because they are helping you, right? They're helping you get people in the door, saving you time. And by the way, you're still going to get your commission and bonus based on the volume that we achieve here. And they're like, oh, I mean, it was that good. They really thought they were talking to a live recruiter. So it is pretty amazing. And I will say, I want to add about iSolve. They have an AI assistant. They were one of the early ones. I don't know why they haven't talked about it as much, but they have an AI assistant that works for both the employee as well as administrators that is really good about workflows, about learning paths, all kinds of things, in addition to the human resource services that you can add and point solutions from a benefit services access. So they do have things that can help employers as they grow. So if there's different modules, different services. So that is one of the standout differentiators for iSolved in that space. So I'm curious to see how Rippling continues to evolve as well as Employee Navigator.
Yes. So Rippling is one that they're saying is coming up high, but this is the voice of the customer. It just came, the system hasn't been there that long. So, approach with caution, but it appears to be very highly rated. So what's new with other vendors? HiBob is another one. If you guys haven't heard of it, that's really making traction in the marketplace. It's for small to mid-sized companies that are looking to expand globally. They're very high on employee engagement. Fidelity and iSolved for benefits administration. So Fidelity is for larger employers, and then iSolved we just talked about is for what would you say? Is it below 1,000, Holly? iSolved, or do they do 1,000 to 2,000
They
also?
definitely have enterprise clients. They have some that are well over 10,000, but I would say for the most part, I'd like to think of them as the upper, small to medium. I really like them between 350 and say, 1,300, 1,500, that space, but it depends on the complexity and what the client needs, right? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be absolutely, it could be higher than that. I've seen them do very well with large organizations. It's just like any other vendor, right? Not every vendor is right for every client. Depends on a lot of things, budget, culture, timing, complexity, all the things that we talk about.
Yes, and culture is so important. I don't know why people don't talk about that, but a system's culture is key to whether or not you're going to like that system in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next slide. All right, we're at the question piece.
Yeah.
What questions do you guys have so far? Any questions for us?
I
Okay.
don't see any in the chat. Or in the Q&A, either one. Do you think
Q&A, let's see.
I didn't see any.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So preparing for the future of work. Strategic role of HR. So this is on the business side of HR. What are the trends that we're seeing? So 55% of organizations now see HR as a strategic business partner. This is another trend that came out of the Sapient Insights survey. apparently, I don't, Holly, you may know more what it was before, but this is a high number. It's like trajecting way higher than it ever did before, which is a good thing. So what does this mean? Um, HR teams have to get away from the tactical piece, continue getting away from that to being more strategic and, systems with more analytics, with more artificial intelligence in them are going to help with that. Um, Low experience levels. So this is not a good thing. What this number it's trending higher and it shouldn't. So apparently a higher percentage of HR and HRS teams have less than 3 years of experience. Last year was 52%. Oh, thank you, Robin. So yeah, that's great. So now we're talking about the teams less than 3 years, the teams in HR with less than 3 years of experience. That's huge, huge. What the challenges that brings is the lack of, I guess, not just expertise, but the strategic piece is missing. And these teams are expected to be thinking at a very high level, right? But if they only have less than 3 years of experience, there's that can't happen. And also, we talked a little bit earlier. What was the other thing that we talked about earlier? Now I'm losing my thought here. The lack of experience and anyways, I'll come back to it. I just forgot
Are we
about that.
losing,
But
people are retiring that have the knowledge? Is that what you were talking about?
people are retired. Yeah. So the reasons, I guess, is the early retirements of people. A lot of people are retiring,
Hmm.
right? Um, I
Yeah.
don't know
So,
what the reasons really are. Do we know what the reasons are
yeah, we talked about
other
the,
than
well,
early retirement?
right. So when we talked about COVID in a few earlier webinars, we talked about it for a number of reasons. Some people took some people were laid off, right? They were laid off because we didn't know how long this thing was going to last. So that was some of that happened at COVID. And
The
so
shift.
the shift, right? Some people started a new gig, right? And they're like, you know what? I like my lifestyle this way. And they didn't go back into corporate. Some people also, as they took an early retirement to start that gig, and the other thing is the population is aging out, right? So we just don't have as many 20 to 30-year-olds as we do 50 and 60-year-olds in the population. So we're a little age heavy, if you will. So there is a
Yeah.
lot more, there are a lot more people on that end of the spectrum than to replace them. And I see Marianne said there was like the budget could be doing it in a low experience level. That's true. And
Ageism.
so,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. And then SHRM even says it maybe closer to 2 years experience. When it says less than three, the SHRM survey that came out in June said it was closer to 2 years of experience versus closer to 3 years experience. So the trend is going
Wow.
down for experience. So a lot of these, when people were retiring early or were laid off, a lot of that, tribal knowledge, if you will, left. It wasn't documented, right? So there's no one to teach it, no one to mentor these new people. So it becomes incumbent on us as professionals, HR professionals, HR technology consultants to help people. Yeah, ageism for sure. To
Yeah.
help and mentor. I mean, I think mentoring with a young person is great for everyone, whether you're where I am, definitely in that other group, the age heavy group, if you will, because you can learn things, right? You can both learn from each other because they have a natural affinity to technologies that maybe I don't have, but a experience with other technologies that I would have. I think there's a great learning opportunity here for everyone, if you choose to open up to it.
Yeah. I also thought about the other thing about using technology, valuing technology more and those certifications than the HR. And
Mhm.
I guess because it's so easy for younger employees to learn. I mean, they grew up in technology. So to them, this is like, yeah, they know the technology, but so maybe that's why also you're seeing them more, the younger
Mhm.
experienced employees in this space. So who all those reasons. The other thing is HR and IT tensions. So for companies, and there was a specific group. So companies with, I believe it was 5,000 employees plus, are the ones seeing this kind of tension between HR and IT. Who owns the data? Who owns HR? Who owns the HRIS, HRIT budgets and strategic decision making? So apparently, where IT is owning HR, HR is not seen as strategic. So that could be the reason, because now HR is seen as a strategic arm of the business and they want more control. That could be why that there's this kind of tension. And I've seen it with my clients too. So next slide, please. So preparing for the future of work. We talked a little bit about this in our last Lunch and Learn, AI adoption being non-negotiable and risking falling behind, really, as HR teams if we haven't started doing this. So please, 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 if you want, we had I gave everybody who attended that Lunch and Learn a playbook on how they can kind of get started on AI, how they can bring it into their organization. So that's something that if you want that, I would be happy to send that to you. But if you haven't started learning, at least experimenting and playing around with AI, you're going to risk falling behind. And not just you, but your organization. Not just that, when you start getting these systems, as you're seeing, systems are adopting artificial intelligence. And it's really important for us and for you as the leader. You're the one implementing these systems, right? You want to understand, number one, what's your AI policy? What's your governance policy? And make sure that your systems are meeting those. So we have to learn it. Like we can't get away from learning AI. Another thing that came out of the HR Tech, one of the key sessions was talking about how do you integrate it. So one of the things that they recommended was starting with your top 2 executive level teams, having them learn a little bit about what AI is, going through that training before you roll it out to the rest of the organization, because you have to have their buy-in first. It works best if you have the leadership buy-in. They understand what it is, the process, so that they can be the champions for the rest of the organization. And then planning for multi-system environments. So companies are moving away from single platforms. And what that means is, a lot of people used to think that it's better to be in one solution that provides payroll and benefits and, talent, comp, than having multiple systems, because there wasn't a really good way to manage all of that. But now employers are realizing that that doesn't necessarily mean better solutions. So now they're going towards, okay, what systems work best for this domain, whether it's benefit, whether it's, attracting employees, whatever it is, getting the solutions that work and then finding ways to integrate those solutions.
Thank you for that segue. Absolutely, because what we're seeing this trend is like it's whole suites, right? It's clusters of solutions. So instead of having, that whole entire, we've all seen it in every vendor seems to have that whole wheel, that solution, the hire to retire solution. We're starting to see vendors that are specializing in segments of that. So for example, I met a vendor at HR Tech called Cara HR, and they are looking at talent. And so they provide the recruiting, the onboarding, performance, and learning, which makes sense, right? Those are all talent suites. not just one, 5 single point solutions, but those 5 areas. And if there are those of you think about Cornerstone, they really, if you think about it, they're a pioneer in this area, right? They started out as just learning. Now they offer the learning, performance management, all kinds of things, right? They offer tremendous amount of services. And someone told me they were even dabbling in payroll, which they could be. I should probably know that, but they offer, if you go to their website, they offer a tremendous amount of solutions. So it's they're clusters. So a company doesn't have to just depend on either a point solution or a HCM suite. But they can, like I said, Cornerstone, they have learning, they've got talent, they've got a talent marketplace. So you can see what talent is available within your own organization. Someone who might be wanting to try a new project or maybe wants to apply for a new job. They have recruiting, they have performance, succession planning, so and other solutions. So it's really interesting to see how this space has evolved. Leigh, did you have anything else?
I know, but Marianne has a perfect point. She said over the last 3 decades, we saw a shift back and forth, single
Absolutely.
point solutions, and she can imagine it going back and forth in the next few years. That would be scary. Hopefully
It
not.
does. It's a pendulum, definitely. I don't know if it goes back and forth but I would say the next few decades, yes. So we see those shifts, right? This is sort of a combination. It's not H, HCM and one then point solution as the biggest price. This is sort of a somewhere in the middle. So we're seeing it mid swing, I guess.
It's
Right?
kind of like Lattice. Lattice is a performance management
Yes.
tool that a lot of people love. But they literally just announced that they're going to have payroll. Now they have payroll coming. I don't know when the payroll piece will go live, but how interesting is that? Like a performance management solution also now doing this cluster thing. So yeah, I guess Marianne, you're right. You're right.
Well, that's, and we see in our at USI, we talk about this in our consulting practice. We see it quite frequently. Like one year will be really heavy into the HCM evaluations, and then the next year we see a lot of benefits administration because people will buy an HCM and then they realize they need something that will handle more complexity. So that tends to go back and forth every few years. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think things do
that
swing.
is a good point, actually. And I meant to say that when I was talking about Workday. So, Workday is one of those full solution systems where their benefit solution is not loved, right? So,
Mhm.
and especially if you're a benefits person, you just will not like it. And they, great company, they realized that they are getting this feedback. And so one of the things that they're working on is their benefits
Mhm.
solution to improve it, which is huge, huge. So here we go. Sapient Insights trend again. HR versus HRIS shift in certifications. We talked a little bit about that. A lot of HRIS people getting the Workday certifications, the SAPs, um, and over the SHRM, which obviously that's creating some issues and lack of experience in these teams, and the strategy dedicated to HR that is needed there. So it's interesting. Jason, if you guys have heard the name, Jason Averbook is somebody in this space, well known. System analyst talks a lot about what it takes to succeed in HR transformations. So if you're getting a technology system, he says that only 10% of succeeding in an HR tech transformation has to do with the technology itself. So that's why this is critical to bring this up about the shift towards getting technical certifications versus the domain certification and the issues that could present. And then the new HR, we talked about that. Many companies planning to, no, we haven't talked about this. So a lot of companies in the next 12 months are planning on switching their whatever current technology they have um, to a new system. So that's a huge trend that came out of the Sapient Insights. So I guess that means people want new things, new features. They're not happy with what they have, and the need for planning in the next 12 months and having somebody with the expertise in this area like Holly and I. This is what we do. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, the voice of the customer. The tech providers are falling short. Okay. So this is huge, and it's been something in the last few, I would say a couple of years, um, where customer service in the HR vendor tech in the HR vendor space. So when I say an HR tech vendor, who is that? Everybody that we're talking about here. Um, all the system solutions, whoever your HCM, I don't want to say names, but they're struggling in the customer service area. And the reason is we kind of talked about it. The same reasons that are affecting our employers, our organizations, where employers have teams with less experience in HR, is the same issue in HR technology. Um, so what does this mean? And how can we kind of help with this? So one of the ways to avoid that or help with that is when you're getting a system kind of like iSolved that also sells a service. Not every system will sell service, but if you're able to purchase service, that's one way to mitigate that. If you're able to hire consultants is another way to mitigate the lack of service, especially when you're going through an implementation. One of the things that I help my clients with is I actually help almost train the vendors' teams so that we can have a good implementation because there's no other way around it. So that is a big thing in this area, and there's nothing really we can do about it other than acknowledging that that's an issue and having some patience around it and then planning on how you're going to mitigate that. Anything to add there, Holly?
No, I agree. And then the other thing about clients need to buy up when it's needed. They need to understand that that is part of the cost of doing business and making that change. Sometimes we feel like as consultants or advisors, or even just the HR, and we're working with purchasing or strategic sourcing or whatever you're calling it within your organization, you're maybe it's your CFO is pushing you, or if your public secretary or treasurer or whoever it might be is pushing you to get the least, the best price possible. Well, sometimes the best price includes that additional level of service for the ongoing, right? You need to be understand that if you need that extra service, you've got to be willing to pay for it. That should be included in your budget. It's not, you can throw
Yeah.
technology at a problem all day long, but it's three things. And you may have heard me say this before. If you know me, you probably have. It's people, processes, and technology. Any one of those things can go awry at any time. You've got to have all of it.
Agreed. And then the increase in optimizing versus switching. So, if you're able to optimize whatever existing solution that you have now, then that's cheaper than getting a completely new system. If that's a possibility, and that's some companies are also doing that.
Mhm. Absolutely. And by optimization, if you don't know what we mean looking at your entire HR technology landscape and seeing where the gaps are and maybe filling it in with a point solution or one of those clusters. Or do you have an overlap? Maybe you have an HCM and you have an expense management, for example, and maybe you don't need that. Maybe you do. Maybe it's really complicated and you have to have that. Or maybe your HCM provider, human capital management, can provide that service for you. That's just an example.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Next slide, please.
I love this quote, and Leah gets credit for finding it, but I think it's really wonderful, a lot to ponder, because many of us have, love to think of ourselves as lifelong learners, but that's changed. We have to not only be lifelong learners, we have to be willing to unlearn the way we did things and relearn, because that last 4 years have taught us, if they haven't taught us anything, they've taught us that, right? So let's move. When you think about learning and changing and skills and what's valuable now, let's move to the next slide. So what is most valuable in your workplace, at your workplace, not necessarily you, but at your workplace? And you can, again, use your phone, or you can, go to slido.com and voice your opinion there. Is it a professional degree or degrees? Is it skills? Oh, look at that. Wow. Is it performance? Is it who the individual is, or is it the role? Because like sometimes some roles are more, prestigious. All right. People are still cutting.
Gone are the days where the professional degree was something.
I don't know if they're gone.
Now that it's not something.
Right.
I'm not saying it's not, it doesn't mean something, but
right. It looks like skills. We're all in agreement that skills count, right? So let's move on to the next slide if we could, Ani. Thank you. All right, skills are the new currency of work. So old school thinking was you had to have a degree, right? And it is important, right? It represents a knowledge base and a set of skills. And there are some professions where you have to have it. I mean, absolutely, I would like my surgeon to have a degree or 2 or 3 or 4. And they were at one point required, right? It was like you had to have a certain degree in order to be sourced for that position. And they were very defined, controlled positions, right? That's kind of how things were in that 30 years prior that we talked about, and certainly through a big portion of my career. But now, in today's world, forward thinking, a degree is sometimes it's a nice, it shows dedication, commitment, that you have, you've got thinking and analytical capabilities, those kinds of things, but it's acquired once. Skills are, you're constantly acquiring skills and learning things throughout your entire career. And they can be applied across the organization. So if you're a project manager, I mean, think of all the different ways you can use project management skills, and they can be applied across the organization for multiple things. I mean, Leah, you and I probably don't think of ourselves as project managers, but we certainly have a lot of project management skills that we apply to our trade, to what we do, to our profession. And though neither of us have consulting degrees, right? We don't have degrees as consultants. These are things that we've learned over the years. So there is just an amazing amount of information and skills that you learn over the years to do this.
Yeah, that's why the ability to learn, unlearn and relearn.
Unlearn and relearn.
Key. People who, like, we have to accept change. We may not like it, some of us, but we have to deal with it and accept it.
Yep, we have to adapt to adopt.
Adapt.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I was reading another one of the articles, and I think it was the Harvard Business Review. Again, I'm not positive. I don't remember. I saw these words keep coming up. Preparing for the future of work. It was all about prediction, adaptability, and resilience. And a lot of it had to do with supply chain and inventory and those kinds of things. But those words resonated with me for HR and HR technology. So with prediction, HR is able to leverage AI. And we talked about that in people analytics to identify talent and the talent needs and skills to future-proof, which is what this article was talking about, and build the organization for success. And if you see me looking over here, it's because I've got notes all over the place and all the things I was thinking about today. So really, it's like who within your organization has the right skills now, this moment, to get your finance team or your distribution center where it needs to be, where they need to be, or what additional skills do they need? Do you have someone that can backfill that position once you move them to this new area? So that's the prediction, right? And then the adaptability, that means they're able to change the business faster, right? HR can help do that faster than your competitors. So you can, again, leverage those existing skills within the organization and across your organization to do that by investing in new skills and acquiring new skills, allowing people to continue to grow, to try new things versus going to your competitors. And then resilience is really, it takes time and money to make those investments. So you have some redundant capacity, an alternative supply chain of talent, and critical inventories, like whatever it is your company does, right? Whatever it produces, whatever service it provides, whatever widget you produce, all those things. So you can kind of weather the shock, whatever that is, whether it is another COVID type incident or whether you happen to be in an area that's impacted by a weather or incident, those kinds of things. So even though they were talking about a completely different incident, it did seem to apply to HR and HR technology. And I found, yeah, I thought that might be interesting, and thinking about how skills is the new currency of work. Anything to add?
True. I agree with everything. That's right on point.
Thank you. All right, let's bring this to a close. All right, we thought about, we've been talking about all the things you have to balance, and I know HR, it's a balancing act for sure. I mean, you've got the people, right? You've got your people, which is probably what you got into it for originally. So you're balancing talent, budget, regulations, company culture, and reputation. And today, Leah started us off with talking about balancing technology and how to optimize systems and leveraging AI, excuse me. And then we've talked about balancing your vendors and all the things and consultants. And I brought it home with you, talking about, again, keeping the talent and the skills balanced. And it's definitely a balance act. But I think that we've hopefully given you some things to think about and how you can have a more balanced HR strategy moving forward. Leah?
Yeah, I agree. So it seems like now is not just your internal HR team, but it's just everything. You have your internal team and you have your vendor support if your vendor is offering that. And then you have your consultants. Just be thinking about all of that to have a well-rounded approach to your HR and your HR future. And please integrate AI or start playing with it.
Absolutely. All right.
Do you have another slide? Oh, that's it.
Yeah, right on time.
Okay. What questions do we have in the remaining few minutes?
I don't see any in chat. And I have
None in Q&A.
no. You all been quiet, but you've been great participants in the chat. So I appreciate that so much.
Yes, we really are. Thank you for joining us. We're so grateful to have you as our community. We're going to be continuing these in the next year, these lunch and learns. And what would really be helpful is if you're able to let us know what you would like to learn more about next year, and we're gonna make sure we incorporate whatever you tell us. So whether it's more AI, which it sounds like we need to offer more of that, and whatever else that you're working on that has to do with HR, people, benefits, people, data, let us know. All right.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Marianne.
Have a
Thanks
wonderful
for
afternoon.
joining. Bye, everyone.